Welcome back to the channel, everybody. I am Brian Lee Durfee, author of The Forgetting Moon and The Blackest Heart, both books published by Simon & Schuster's Saga Press. Today, we're going to be reviewing The Caves of Steel by Isaac Asimov. And you know I love graphic design, you know I love cover illustrations, so we're going to review the cover first. This has got a magnificent painting by none other than the great science fiction illustrator Michael Whelan. I love this painting, it's great. In fact, Michael Whelan did most of the artwork for the entire robot series of books by Isaac Asimov. I've got iRobot over here, which was the first collection of robot stories. This was Isaac Asimov's 11th written novel, and according to him, in the foreword that's in this book, this was his breakout hit. Now, you would think that Foundation and the Foundation trilogy would have been his breakout hit, because he published those before he even published this. But the Foundation trilogy didn't become popular until much later in his life. This was the book that put him on the map, and I can see why after having read it. This is a very, very commercial book, and it moves like a great mystery thriller, and I loved every minute of it, and we're going to talk about this. So, Isaac Asimov had written the short story collection iRobot, and his publisher wanted more robot-type stories. And he was having a hard time coming up with stuff, and then he kind of stumbled across an idea where he's like, what if robots, because he thought back to the origin of the word robot. Now, robot comes from a Czechoslovakian word meaning compulsory labor. Sort of like, domo arigato, Mr. Roboto. You know, thank you very much. You know, that's why I wore the Styx shirt. You know, and we all know that, you know, that robots will eventually take over the world. You know, we're going to have robots that do all the jobs for us, and this is kind of the thing that Isaac Asimov was thinking about in sex robots, you know, and I'm not here to judge, you know, when there are sex robots, I'm not here to judge any of you that might partake, but I'm saying that Isaac Asimov was running through all of these things in his head, and then he remembered a play that was a Czechoslovakian play that was that came out. It was just called Robot, and it came out in 1921, and it was about robots who were manual laborers, and they were like, well, why the fuck are we doing all the work and the humans just to get to lay around? And then so they rebelled and they killed all the humans. Seems to be like the story of every robot. I mean, like, if it's kind of like if you're gonna start a theme park and bring dinosaurs back via the DNA and then put them in a theme park, you know that shit's gonna go ass over teapot pretty quick. Once we start making robots do all of our work, and then once they realize they're doing all of our work, things are gonna go ass over teapot pretty quick, and we're gonna be living in the Terminator world, right? It's just gonna happen. Isaac Asimov even thought back further to probably the first ever robot story that was ever written, and that was Mary Shelley's Frankenstein, where again, it's a mechanical man who fucks up the village. I mean, he's just like, you know, I mean, it just happens. And so he was thinking of all these things, and he thought, robots are probably in our future. And they're probably going to take over all the farming jobs, all the manufacturing jobs. And then he started thinking, but what if they started taking over all the fireman jobs and all the police jobs? And that's where he got the germ of the idea for this story. He's like, what if there's a detective on the police force, and he has to go solve a murder, but he is tasked with the assignment of, you have to take this robot with you. And you and the robot will work on the murder investigation together. And whichever one of you finds out who the murderer is, whichever one of you solves the case first, gets to keep his job. And if the robot solves his case first, he'll get to keep his job, and you will get fired. And probably we're going to do that with every detective. That was the germ of the story. And that's where we start off. It's fucking great. What an amazing setup for a story. I just loved it. And all of that information that I just gave you was found in the 5-page prologue that Isaac Asimov actually wrote for this book. So I'm not pulling this information out of my asshole. It actually was from the book. So don't get in the commenty part of the YouTube video and be like, you got all that wrong, man. Because people do. Oh my God, people fucking love to argue. I can bring up any fact. I can say 2 + 2 = 4, and there's gonna be some asshole in the comment section being like, hey, you don't know what the fuck you're talking about. 2 + 2 not 4. Ain't not 4. Everything I just said, I pulled it directly from Isaac Asimov's own words, directly out of this fucking book. So let's not. Okay. So what happens is the book is started in well, I don't remember when it was started. You can comment on that. I can't remember what year this takes place. So if you know, that's one thing I forgot to write down. If you know, you can argue that anyway. But it does take place in New York City sometime in the future. Now, on page 5, I wanted to read a little snippet of page 5 because I just loved it. So on page 5, our main character is named Elijah Bailey. And he's a human, and he moans and pisses and moans about everything. Ironically, and in a very ironic way. And I love this here. He's like, Elijah had heard many people moaning about the invention of the atomic pile. He moaned about it himself when things went wrong or when he got tired. Moaning like that was a built-in facet of human nature. That's why I mentioned the commenty part of the YouTube. The commenty part of Facebook and Twitter, it's just a cesspool of people moaning and trying to outwit each other and outsmart each other and out-comment each other and tell everybody else that, no, your opinion is wrong. Even if you quoted directly out of a book, you didn't really quote what you quoted. Because that's why I put that, that's why I moaned about that in the video. This whole book review has a theme to it. Okay, so back in the moaning like that was built into the facet of human nature. Back in the coal century, people moaned about the invention of the steam engine. In one of Shakespeare's plays, a character moaned about the invention of gunpowder. 1,000 years in the future, they'll be moaning about inventions of the positronic brain or whatever else. I catch myself moaning about when I'm on my computer and it doesn't work quite the way I want it to. I find myself moaning about it. When my cell phone, I'm trying to watch a YouTube video on my cell phone and it starts doing the spinny thing where the buffering thing, and I'm like, goddamn, fuck, this is bullshit, you know? I mean, it's taking, and I'm like, I gotta just realize I gotta be patient because this information is traveling up to outer space and back down to my phone, and I gotta just relax. But ironically, he's moaning about how things in the future, everybody's gonna moan about something, and then he goes to work, and lo and behold, there's a murder that takes place. A spacer, keep in mind, this book was written in 1954. A spacer is found dead with a blaster bolt through his chest. Boosh. Which means in 1954, this is before Star Wars or Star Trek, people like Isaac Asimov were thinking of blasters, like Han Solo blasters. And so this spacer, and because at this point in the future, New York City is like the hub of sort of like a space gilding galactic empire, and spacers come in and out of it because it's a big spaceport. Yada, yada, yada. Well, one of the spacers is found dead with a blaster bolt to the chest, and his captain says, you gotta go investigate this murder. We gotta figure out who killed the spacer, because if the Spacers Guild isn't happy with how the investigation goes, you know, shit's gonna go bad. And then he's like, but, oh, by the way, there's something else I gotta tell you. You gotta take this robot with you to help you solve the murder. And he starts moaning, like, robot? What do I have to take a robot for? Why would I take a robot on a murder investigation? And the captain's like, well, because if you don't solve the mystery before the robot solves the mystery, you're going to get fired. The robot will take your job. And then it's just like, that's the idea that Isaac Asimov have. So he goes and meets the robot. And the robot, you can't tell that it's You know, they're like Cylons in Battlestar Galactica. You can't tell that it's a robot. It looks like you wouldn't be able to tell. And the robot guy's very good looking. And his name is, God, what the fuck was his name? His name was Daniel, Daniel, Oliver. Well, it's right here on the fucking cover. The Adventures of Elijah Bailey and R. Daniel Oliver. Anyway, so these two guys got to team up to go solve the murder. Not only that, but he's got to let the robot, Elijah has to let the robot live with him in his own house, with his own family, whilst they go solve the murder, which causes a lot of tensions between the wife and the things, because, I mean, you know, he's a damn fine robot. You know, like I told you, the sex robots are going to be a thing, people, and how the hell am I going to compete with the ladies against a sex robot that looks as good as these guys up on the cover of this book? I mean, it's just, forget about it. I mean, I'm moaning now. I'm moaning about this future now. I mean, not only that, not only are the sexy hot robots going to take all the women, but once the sexy hot robots realize they're doing all the work for the lazy humans, then they're going to fucking turn Terminator and just kill us. Anyway, it's a bleak future, folks. I'm just here reporting. You know, it's a bleak future we face. It just really is. And that's kind of what's going on with this book. It's kind of like, do we really want to live in an area where these superhuman Brad Pitt look-alike robots are doing everything for us, and then they just gotta go, hey, what the fuck are we? What the, you know, if you've watched Battlestar Galactica, you know what I'm talking about. If you've watched The Terminator, you know, the robots don't like us. Anyway, I loved Caves of Steel. This was like a really great hard-boiled murder mystery set in the future with bizarre robots and bizarre technologies. I just dug it. I dug every minute of it. It's shot to my top list of favorite science fiction novels of all time. Like if I was to redo my 30 most favorite science fiction novels, I would probably put this one up in there somewhere. I just absolutely adored every minute of this. Thumbs up, 10 stars out of 10 stars for the Caves of Steel. Dino fucking might.